They told you America was built on freedom. They didn't tell you it was built on drugs. The story you're about to hear is one that powerful families spent 200 years trying to erase. Behind every statue, every mansion, every Ivy League hall of marble, there's a secret. The names you admire, Roosevelt, Astor, Forbes, share one hidden beginning. They got rich selling poison to an entire nation, and history quietly looked away. It wasn't cocaine or heroin yet. It was opium, sticky brown resin that turned millions of Chinese into addicts, and it made the early American elite unimaginably wealthy. Picture the 1800s, sailing ships with sharp black sails cutting through fog toward China's coast. In their holds, crates of British-grown opium stacked like gold bars, each voyage worth a fortune, each voyage pushing another city toward ruin. America's most respected families were in on it. They called it the China trade, a polite term for global drug trafficking. The profits flowed home, clean and gleaming, building universities, banks, and dynasties. Franklin Delano Roosevelt, hero of the Great Depression, face on Mount Rushmore. His family's fortune started with those same opium runs. Warren Delano II, his grandfather, joined Russell and Company at 19 and helped lead America's part of the trade. He lived in the treaty port of Canton, where money was faster than law. There he bought opium from British warehouses in India, smuggled it past Chinese patrols, and sold it to local agents. The profit margins were 400%. Morality didn't stand a chance. Delano came home rich enough to build a 40-room mansion in New York. When the Panic of 1857 wiped him out, he simply went back to China, sold more opium, and returned richer than before. That money paid for his daughter, Sarah's education, and for her marriage to James Roosevelt. Their son, Franklin, grew up surrounded by luxury. Private tutors, Harvard, political mentors, the best money could buy. And that money was drug money. Decades later, as president, FDR signed America's first federal laws to control narcotics. He fought a war on drugs his own bloodline had financed. The irony was almost cosmic. The Roosevelts weren't alone. John Jacob Astor, once the richest man in America, built his empire the same way. His fur trade was real, but it was the opium voyages that made him a legend. His ship, Macedonian, ran between Turkey and China, carrying furs one way and narcotics the other. He sold Turkish opium for Chinese silver, then used that silver to buy silk and tea for American markets. By the 1840s, he was worth $20 million, $500 million today. Astor money built libraries, hotels, and the myth of respectable old wealth. But at its core stood the same brown powder that destroyed a civilization. It's never mentioned in school books. Only shipping logs remember. Then there were the Forbes brothers, Robert Bennett Forbes and John Murray Forbes. They captained sleek clipper ships packed with contraband. Their company, tied to Russell and Company, turned Boston Harbor into an opium hub. Robert sailed the Leardia and Antelope, racing across monsoon winds to Canton. Each chest of opium weighed about 140 pounds. Each chest was worth thousands. John invested the proceeds in railroads, mills, and eventually a publishing house, Forbes magazine. Yale University had its own link. Samuel Russell, the founder of Russell and Company, retired to Connecticut as a national hero. His cousin used that fortune to start Yale's most powerful secret society, Skull and Bones. Inside its windowless tomb, generations of leaders were initiated: presidents, senators, CIA directors. The society's trust fund still bears Russell's name. It was built on money from Chinese addiction. Harvard shared in the pattern. Thomas Handesid Perkins, Boston's grand philanthropist, donated buildings, museums, and a school for the blind. All of it financed by decades of running Turkish and Indian opium into Chinese ports. The Cabot family followed close behind. They traded in silk, tea, and yes, opium. Quietly, profitably, endlessly. Their name still appears on Harvard dorms, clean stone hiding dirty history. Abiel Lowe of New York did the same. His firm trafficked opium under the American flag, then poured the money into banks and universities. His son Seth Lowe became mayor of New York City and president of Columbia University. The Lowe Memorial Library at Columbia, majestic, domed, and holy, is an opium monument in disguise. Thousands study there each year, unaware of what paid for its marble. The irony would make history blush. By the 1830s, American firms held roughly 10% of China's illegal drug market. That's billions in today's dollars. Each voyage risked death or execution, but success meant generational wealth. Chinese officials knew the damage. They saw villages emptied, fields abandoned, families ruined. The emperor demanded the trade stop, but foreign merchants ignored him. In 1839, Commissioner Lin Zexu confiscated and destroyed 1,000 tons of opium in Canton. Britain retaliated with cannons. The First Opium War had begun. China's wooden junk stood no chance against British gunboats. When the smoke cleared, China was forced to pay heavy reparations and open new ports. Even worse, it lost Hong Kong, a crown jewel handed to the empire that poisoned it. American merchants stayed officially neutral, but quietly profited. While Britain fought, U.S. ships filled the gap. They supplied smugglers, moved silver, and made fortunes from another nation's misery. After the war, the business only grew. The Second Opium War in the 1850s legalized the trade entirely. By then, addiction had hollowed China from within. 10 to 12 million Chinese men were addicted, about 1 in 10 adults. Opium dens lined every street. Silver reserves drained away. The nation once called the Middle Kingdom became the world's pharmacy customer. Back in America, new mansions rose. Marble halls in Boston and New York glittered with money made overseas. Portraits of solemn merchants hung where their victims' names should have been. The hypocrisy didn't end with time. By the early 1900s, America was leading global efforts to criminalize drugs. The same elite families that had sold opium now championed prohibition. The 1912 Hague Opium Convention and the 1914 Harrison Narcotics Act outlawed the trade. But by then, the old money was safe, invested, and laundered through respectability. They closed the door behind them and threw away the key. In newspapers, opium users were painted as degenerates. Immigrant communities were blamed for the very habit America had exported. History had been flipped on its head. Go to Harvard's archives. You'll find opium described as commerce. Visit Yale. Russell's portrait still hangs with no mention of his trade. Even the FDR library downplays the Delano fortune as business in China. The whitewashing was deliberate. Families donated millions to museums and universities, quietly shaping how history was told. In exchange for generosity, curators forgot to mention the drugs. Yet the paper trail survives. Shipping logs, insurance policies, letters and account books fill archives in the US, Britain, and China. They tell the same story. America's first big money came from narcotics. Historians have uncovered it again and again. Eric Dolan's When America First Met China, Basil Lubbock's The Opium Clippers, and Daniel Delano's The Delano Influence lay it out clearly. But most classrooms never touch the subject. Imagine if this happened today. A handful of billionaires flood another nation with fentanyl, profit wildly, then fund top universities with the proceeds. A century later, their descendants run for president, and nobody asks where the money came from. That's not fantasy. That's precedent. The opium families did it first. We're just living in the world they built. In China, this era is known as the Century of Humiliation. It's taught in every schoolbook as the moment foreign greed shattered the empire. They remember the ships, the smoke, and the addiction. In America, we remember none of it. Our textbooks speak of brave merchants and expanding trade. We never say the word opium. That silence has power. It protects reputations, dynasties, and entire institutions. It lets old money stay pure while the truth rots in archives. What can be done now? First, acknowledge reality. These families sold poison for profit. Their wealth came from suffering, and their legacies still benefit. Second, ask whether the institutions built with that money owe a moral debt. Should universities teach the full story? Should those who still profit at least speak the truth? Third, learn from the pattern. Whenever money and morality clash, history tends to pick money. And when the winners write the books, the crimes fade into myths of success. Franklin Delano Roosevelt's family made its fortune selling opium to China. The Astors, Forbeses, Russells, Perkinses, Cabots, and Lows did the same. They built America's early wealth, then used it to shape the very laws and schools that define virtue today. This isn't conspiracy, it's documented history. The evidence sits in museums and libraries that their money helped build. They wanted you to see the marble, not the mud beneath it. But truth has a way of resurfacing. No dynasty, however rich, can bury every record, and every generation that rediscovers it gets a little closer to honesty. So the next time you see a name carved in stone, Astor, Roosevelt, Russell, remember what it cost. Remember the sailors who smuggled, the addicts who suffered, the empire that fell. And remember that wealth without accountability always leaves someone else paying the price. Because history isn't just about what happened. It's about what we choose to remember. And now you know the story they tried to make you forget. If this changed how you see America's past, subscribe to Shadow Economics. More hidden histories are waiting. The truth might be buried, but not forever.